welcome to the very best part of my broadcast week. I want to take you back, ladies and gentlemen, to early August 2016. I was in Detroit at the Detroit Economic Club. Then Republican nominee Donald Trump was giving a speech. And I saw someone in the crowd who caught my eye, Congresswoman Debbie Dingell. And I waved her over. We've known each other for many years. And I asked her, I said, how are things looking in Michigan? And she said, I'm worried. And I said, really? And she said, yes, it doesn't feel right. Words to that effect. Debbie Dingell is our guest this week. So, Congresswoman, it's great to be in your office, 105 Cannon House Office Building right here on Capitol Hill. How are you feeling about Michigan this year?
We're competitive. First of all, welcome to my office.
Thank
It's
you.
good to see you. And I always like the fact that you do care about Michigan. Michigan's competitive. Michigan is a purple state. This election is going to be competitive in Michigan until the last vote is counted on Election Day, which is why everybody needs to know their vote matters. And I am still somebody who thinks that this election, in 2016, by this time, when you were talking to me, I was telling you Trump was going to win.
Yeah.
I knew a month out. Nobody believed me. Everybody thought I was crazy. I may be still crazy, but history played out. I don't think we know who's going to win Michigan yet.
So it feels more competitive than it did to you back in 2016.
Yes, in the sense that I already knew, as each week went on, I had a sense Donald Trump was going to win.
Right.
I don't think either of the candidates has won Michigan yet.
And part of, I think, what you were feeling in 2016 was that there was a gravitational pull or a gravitational orientation toward Trump, and that the Clinton campaign wasn't doing a lot in Michigan.
So I very clearly remember what I told everybody back then, because nobody was listening to me. But Donald Trump was talking to auto workers. He was talking to union workers. He understood their fear and anxiety that their jobs had been shipped overseas. Our supply chain had totally been shipped overseas. Now, people did not understand until COVID what that meant or how dependent we'd become on other countries. They were worried about their jobs. They felt like NAFTA was the worst trade policy, and it was, that had happened to them. So trade was clearly one of the most significant issues, the economy. This election is going to be about the economy. The fact of the matter is, what happens and is talked about at the dinner table every single night, the prices at the grocery store, how much the mortgage payment is or the rent is, if their children are growing older, are they going to be able to go to college? Should they go to college? All of those are the kinds of issues that people talk about, and we've got to be addressing.
Mm-hmm. Is the Harris campaign, as you view it, well organized and doing that kind of outreach in Michigan now?
So one, I have to say, they listened to me, and she came to Michigan on Labor Day. I loved Hillary and Bill. You know that. They were friends.
Yep.
They said they should have listened to me later. You got to go in those union. We all have to go in those union halls. I was talking to those union hall members. We got to make sure we're talking to the young people who are really worried about their future. But yes, I know that she is. And it's not just, she's not just talking to me now because she's a candidate for president. She has talked to me on a regular basis since we got to know each other when she was in the Senate. She wanted to understand the auto industry. She wanted to understand the union workers. And quite frankly, one of the other subjects she has talked to me about frequently since the day that I really bonded with her and we got to know each other and become friends is the different ethnic backgrounds, the cultural issues of a state like Michigan, which has a rich cultural diversity.
I was in Michigan recently. I was in Dearborn, Saginaw, and a town called Charlotte. I was schooled on the proper pronunciation. It's in Eaton County. Talked about 20 voters. No one was undecided, and it split 11-9. Harris 11, Trump 9. But I would say that 9 Trump was more enthusiastic and energized, more confident or more assertive than the Harris. Would you say that's reflective of the state writ large? Or a kind of a small sample that I shouldn't read too much into?
Yeah, I think it's probably, you could go obviously much broader than those
Sure.
three cities. Eaton County is clearly where the Trump base is very strong. And I was saying this when Joe Biden was still the candidate. The Trump base is strong, committed, and they're voting. And we almost had, prior to the vice president becoming the president, we had a role reversal. Normally, Republicans are well organized. They put the money into the canvassing, the organization, and we haven't had the dollars and have had to compete with them, but we've had the enthusiasm at the base. And we did not have, they have enthusiasm at the base, we did not. That has changed in Michigan. I'm very proud of the fact that the Ann Arbor office for Harris, 25% of all the contacts in the state are being made by volunteers out of that office. When I go in, I try to go in there, I'll be in there a lot more once we're no longer in Congress, but I'm there every week, at least once while I'm home. There are hundreds of people in there, every canvas. They like doing, I said to the campaign, because Gwen Waltz was there this week, and I was like, could she go someplace else and I be there when she's going to be there? And they were like, no, when we get the volunteers in that office, we get more voter contacts than we do anywhere. We have an excited base. And when you go in the office, it's young people, it's college kids, it's seniors, it's retirees, it's working people. So it's not even, the excitement is there of people caring about the future. But there is a group of people in the middle that don't know what they're going to do. They don't know if their vote matters. They're union workers that are worried that that's the group that we've got to worry about and turn out.
When I was in Michigan, I heard three things from Trump supporters very quickly, and they all said it almost exactly the same way. The economy was better, immigration was not a problem, and the world wasn't on fire. That's why they want to vote for Trump and see him returned. What's the answer to that from your perspective?
Well, we have to talk about the economy, and we have to get people to really understand what Donald Trump would do to the economy, that what he wants to do is to give tax cut to the billionaires and tax incentives to corporations to locate overseas. You just need to take Project 2025. He himself has said that we want to repeal the Affordable Care Act. Really? Do you know what that will do to people's health insurance costs? Do you know how many millions of people have health insurance because they didn't have it before? How the cost of insulin is now capped at $35 because of the work we've done? Just the increase in healthcare costs, or having no health insurance because the Affordable Care Act has been repealed. I don't believe Republicans would vote to do that right now, though they may be afraid to say it publicly. You have to look at what else is buried in Project 2025, like that union worker. My UAW workers count on overtime. They had a good contract that was negotiated last year, but they get paid overtime. Donald Trump doesn't want to pay overtime to anybody. They would repeal overtime. So you have employers that could mandate people have to work 60, 70, maybe 80 hours a week. And you could, if you said no, you could lose your job, but you wouldn't be compensated at time and a half or double if it's a holiday or a weekend. So we have to really tell people what Donald Trump would do to just the average working man and woman in this country if he becomes president again.
That is the voice of Debbie Dingell. We are in her office, 105 Cannon House office building. Segment 2 of the Takeout coming your way in just one moment.
We need comprehensive immigration reform. I hear it from all sides.
Welcome back to the Takeout. Debbie Dingell is our special guest. 6th District of Michigan, Democrat, member of the House. When I was in Michigan and I talked to Trump supporters, I met two women in Dearborn in their mid to late 50s, both of whom told me, Congresswoman, that they think every day about the possibility of being raped by an illegal immigrant. And I said to them, really, you personally think about it that way? And they both looked me straight in the eye and said, yes, they do. I was a little taken aback by that level of personal anxiety. That kind of shocked me.
I think that I'm not going to blame this on anybody, but I am going to say that there's been, a lot of media sensationalism, and one of the most prominent cases has been in Michigan, and people have talked about it. And you know what? People want to be safe. I don't care what party you are. I say that. People want to be safe, and they want to know that they're going to be safe. I support our law enforcement strongly. And I really, quite frankly, get tired of some of the games that are played on messaging bills that makes it sound like people like me, if you don't vote for this, they have no idea what's inside the bill, how badly written the bill is, how it does nothing to make people safer, but you're anti-people being safe. But I think that there's been some of that. We need comprehensive immigration reform in this country. I do not believe, look, I have people that are giving me death threats and coming up and attacking me on the street right now. It's coming from many different ways, and I want to be safe. I think that I don't ever dismiss anybody's fear. So something has made them fear that somebody could hurt them, that an illegal immigrant could rape them. I don't, hopefully, Dearborn, Michigan has one of the strongest law enforcements in the state of Michigan. That police department is a great police department. They kept me safe more than you will ever know, including when 2 men showed up in front of my house with assault weapons after some of the stuff that had gone on. So hopefully those 2 women will know they've got a law enforcement that's going to keep them safe. We need comprehensive immigration reform. I hear it from all sides. I mean, here's the reality. Republicans and Democrats worked together in the Senate for months to develop a bipartisan compromise. Compromise isn't a dirty word. And it got killed because of one man. And that was Donald Trump, who said, I don't want to give anybody a win. Well, you know what? I think a win for the American people is something we should all be working towards.
And that bill was much more to the liking of conservative Republicans. There was almost nothing in there in the grand scheme of things under the umbrella term of comprehensive immigration reform for Democrats. Almost nothing.
It was
a tough pill for Democrats to swallow.
But we need comprehensive immigration reform, and presidents have been trying for it for decades, Republican and Democratic. And but when I'm home, do you know how, I hear from my small business owners, the 7-Eleven owners, how they can't find anybody to work in their stores. I hear from my farmers who can't find anybody. I have this one, I do farmers markets every weekend, and I know all my farmers. It's a woman whose husband died a couple of years ago. She can't get anybody to pick the apples. She can't get anybody we need people in some of these jobs. But we also don't want people who shouldn't be coming into this country to come into this country. So why do Republicans always block putting more enforcement at the border when we try to give them more money and more head count to do that? So why, we all need, I don't want to see anybody afraid that they're going to be raped, by the way, by anybody, illegal immigrant, or it happens too much in this country. One of the people that is the leaders on violence against women. But we need too many people get invested in fighting each other, not agreeing. Compromise is a dirty word. Compromise isn't a dirty word. We need comprehensive immigration reform, period. There is a real need for it for many ways, from national security to economic reasons. Caregiving. We have a caregiving crisis in this country. Who are frequently the ones that take care of both of our children and the people we love as they get older? We've got a workforce problem. Let's work together and solve it. That's what I say.
Because many immigrants fill those positions.
That is correct.
The statistics are very clear on that.
But we need comprehensive immigration reform. It should be done legally.
Right. In 2016, one of the many questions before the country was, is it ready for a woman president? That's another question in this election, 2024. Is America ready?
You know what? I'm really looking forward to the day that we are not looking at sexism, racism, cultural background, and we're electing somebody because of their qualifications.
But you
and
know as well
the
as I do,
capability.
until it happens, it's still an open question in this country.
So let's say that Hillary Clinton fractured the ceiling, and I think people are more open to it. They've seen her in the job for 4 years. So Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State for a long time too. I think she's doing a good job of trying to define who she is, to show people she could be the commander-in-chief. I think she's done an excellent job of doing that. And as I look at you, I'm going to say, I hope people look at the qualifications of these two people. And we don't think of gender. We think about who they are, how they try to bring people together or not bring people together, and who we want to be fighting for the values that we all have for the future.
If you could offer one piece of advice to the Harris Walls campaign, what would it be?
Let her be herself. Get out there. Get in the union halls. Talk to everyday people.
How about give more interviews?
I think you're starting to see her do more of that too, because that's part of people getting to know her.
Mm-hmm. When you think about 2016 and 2024, do you think there's also a component of this election that is more knowledgeable about who Donald Trump is and isn't than there was in 2016?
Yes.
And what factor do you think that will play?
I don't know. That's what I'm going to tell you a story.
Please.
This was after the 2020 election. I was in Belleville, Michigan. I love my town. It's a great town. I was out at the car show, and two guys came up to me, UAW guys. We had a great conversation. And we talked about the election, and we talked about Donald Trump and Joe Biden. And I said, look, here's my problem. I didn't like the way he pitted people against each other. I don't like the way that we disrespect each other, that we don't treat each other with dignity and respect, the way that you attack a John McCain, who was a war hero. And they agreed with me. And I said, and that sets a tone. And I don't think that's a good tone. And they agreed with almost everything that I said in that conversation. Talked about trade. I said, we did a terrible job talking about trade. We got the UMCA bill passed. We got to be fighting for these jobs. Joe Biden's going to be a great president fighting for the working people. They agreed with everything I said. But when they finished, and it was a very friendly conversation, but when we finished the conversation, they said to me, thanks for taking the time. It was a 20-minute conversation, but we still think Donald Trump won the election. And that's I wish Donald Trump didn't know my name and didn't know who I was, because it's not great to have him mad at you or take you on. But I'm not gonna not speak up when I think it's the right thing to do. I do what I think is right. I want us all to treat each other with respect. We can disagree agreeably. And I worry about the tone. And I worry about the tone that's even being set at these rallies. This anger, this pitting people against each other, this disrespect. That doesn't help us. I have this message for people in many different settings, but I'm going to say this to Americans that are listening to us. United we stand, divided we fall. And our strength in this country is the fact that we are the United States of America, and pitting us against each other helps nobody. It weakens us.
The voice of Debbie Dingell. We are in her office. Cannon on the first floor. I'll just leave it at that. I was corrected about the number. It's on the first floor. It's in Cannon office building. Back for segment 3 of the Takeout in just 1 minute.
The president has told me he's working towards a ceasefire. I think he's thought multiple times that they were close.
Welcome back to the Takeout, continuing our conversation with Congresswoman Debbie Dingell. You mentioned the two gentlemen you talked to after the 2020 election. They still thought that former President Trump won. He didn't win. We've gone over that a number of times on this show. What are your concerns about 2024 and whether the results will be accepted, whether Michigan will be a front in any battle over the election results?
I am worried. I wish I could tell you that I wasn't. And I think Michigan will be one of the ground zero states. It's very clear by already some of the groundwork that you're seeing set. One, the president won't commit to accepting the election results if he doesn't win. I'm one of those members of Congress that said, I'm going to accept the election results no matter what happens. But I think there are people. Look, I'm going to really tell you this. I remember talking to Hillary after she lost the election in 2016, and her talking about foreign interference and talking about Russia did. And maybe my first reaction was, okay, I do believe right now we are actively watching interference from the outside in our election process. And coming to Michigan, I actively believe that we are seeing people stir up trouble in my communities, trying to pit us against each other, trying to cause hate, and being successful, unfortunately, at it sometimes too.
Is that about the Israel conflict in Gaza?
It is perhaps the biggest issue, yes. And by the way, we got to bring everybody together. People are hurting. I don't care if you're from the Jewish community. I went to the synagogue the day after the
October 7th?
terrorist attack, right. And in the synagogue that night, people were asked who in this room is connected to, or it was the synagogue, who in the synagogue is connected to someone of the hostages. 7/8 of the synagogue stood up. But I also, if you were in Dearborn.
I was.
I have other parts of my district that have very significant Muslim or American communities. They've all lost. I had one man who's lost 40 members of his family in Gaza. The Jewish community is feeling like they're being attacked by anti-Semitism. It's real. We had signs in Ann Arbor 3 weeks ago that were posted on all over the place. I shouldn't even say this on television because it's wrong. Well, I won't say it. But it was such an anti-Semitic
And very
statement.
inflammatory and very violent.
It was very inflammatory and violent. They also said, kill your rep. That was maybe my least favorite. But
Meaning you.
Meaning me. But I don't believe anybody from my community is posting those signs. I believe people from the outside are doing it to stir up trouble and then pit people against each other. And it's not right. I've had town halls where the law enforcement said it, that I'm still doing town halls because I am not going to let people cut me off from hearing from people directly about what they think, what they feel, what's going on.
Have you been advised not to do them?
Nobody would try to do that to me. They've told me to be careful. And I've had some not pleasant ones, but I've had some probably the best town hall I've had was an environmental town hall in my downrivers, which has a lot of very serious issues with cleanup, Superfund sites, et cetera. And I had everybody in, and it was several hundred people, and we talked about every project there was. But every 5 minutes, someone would get up and accuse me of being an anti-feminist, a killer, a murderer. And I would say to them, and I do meet with anybody. I will meet with everybody and anybody because I need to know what they know. I need to know what they feel. And I would say, this is an environmental town hall meeting. We have EPA and Eagle and others here so we can get into the specifics. I will meet you within my office, and they keep screaming, and the law enforcement would escort them out. One, just the sheer number of people that were up and doing it, but law enforcement was convinced that they were paid to be there. Now, the downrivers, the men and women live there who really worried about the pollution that's left behind a lot of these old chemical manufacturing plants. We really had an honest talk, and they felt like it was one of the best meetings they had had because people gave them straight answers. Mm-hmm. And I even said to some people, I stayed calm. I didn't, but you know, what good does that do? I mean, they're looking for media, mm-hmm. and I treat them with respect. I want to meet with everybody, and I do meet with everybody.
So when I was in Dearborn, I met a gentleman who's a realtor, not an agitator, not from outside, lived in Dearborn his whole life, who was convinced that what has happened in Gaza is genocide, and the United States is simply not doing enough to describe it as it, to his point of view, plainly is, or to discourage it from continuing. What would you tell him?
We need a ceasefire. I was one of the very first people that called for a ceasefire. I was on Face the Nation and tried to describe to people what it was like for people in my district who had families there.
The agony.
We've needed it since then. We need the hostages to come home. We need peace. And we're seeing an escalation. It's getting worse. I mean, the Jewish community is so worried about anti-Semitism and hate, but so is the Muslim community about Islamophobic. It's real for both of them. That's what people do not understand right now, that the hate that somebody's out there fanning the flames on, it is threatening us. People need to understand how hurting people are, how this war in the Mideast, which has been going on for centuries, is very real in our own communities, that we need to understand how much people are hurting. You can imagine how many times I've talked directly to the president about this, and quite frankly, I want everybody to know the vice president came up to me at the holiday party and got me in a corner and talked to me for 30 minutes and has repeatedly talked to me about what are you hearing, what are people saying. Not she wants to know the gossip, she wants the real stories from the ground. The president has told me he's working towards a ceasefire. I think he's thought multiple times that they were close.
There's reporting this week in many publications that he has conceded privately that it may elude him and his presidency.
I hope he never stops fighting for it. I'm not going to make national news by telling you that I do what I do think. I think there are some people that don't want peace. And I think it's destabilizing the Mideast. I want what is happening in Lebanon right now, that is a danger to world peace. I do not think that people understand. And while the Gaza, more than 40,000 innocent people have been killed. And we still have hostages that have been gone, will have been gone a year. And we don't know who is alive and who is. This is like a nightmare for everybody involved. Now, you come to Dearborn now, as you may or may not know, I have many Palestinian constituents, but not nearly as many as Lebanese. I mean, the Dearborn community has a very significant Lebanese population. And while a lot of people go up north to vacation, they all go home to Lebanon. These are my family and friends. I've lived with them for 40 years. Their families are being killed. We had a call this week. We do a bi-weekly meeting with the mayors and the county executive, and the head of Homeland Security for Wayne County's family had lost 3 members the night before.
In Lebanon.
In Lebanon. That's real. I mean, and every mayor.
Doesn't get more real.
And we know them. I mean, because the families come here and they go to see their families. This isn't an anonymous face. People know who are dying in this community. And they're desperate for their families. I mean, I've been on the phone with people who are trying to get families out. And, yesterday, 19 commercial flights were canceled out of Lebanon. But the Jewish community is hurting equally. I mean, this is what I have. Remember, I've spent time with the hostages' families, but I get yelled at. Yelled at isn't the right word. There are just strong emotions and passionate people I've known for 40 years who have sons that are in the idea. This is a very dangerous time, Garrett. We need peace. We need a ceasefire. We need no one else to die. And somehow, as elected officials, we need to somehow find a way to bring people together, not keep putting kerosene on a fire that is very dangerous to world peace.
The voice of Debbie Dingell, segment 4 of the Takeout, coming your way in just a minute.
We're supposed to work together to protect our country, to protect those that we represent. And that means you got to make a bigger effort to work together and find solutions.
Welcome back to the Takeout. Debbie Dingell is our special guest. So, what is at stake, separate from the presidential election, in control of the House? I have people who send me emails or texts wondering if the Speaker is Mike Johnson, could there be some effort to use some other mechanism, the 12th Amendment or some other thing? Oh, that's a bell announcing something going on here on Capitol Hill. Ladies and gentlemen, do not be alarmed. It's a regular sounding bell. No one be alarmed.
Except it doesn't really mean anything because we're not accomplishing anything in the work we're
We'll get to that in a second. If Republicans are in control of the House and there's a contingent election, do you fear that? Do you have anxiety about that?
I have, in my dreams, I would never have thought that January 6th could have happened 2 years ago. Now, I did anticipate there could be some problems. I told my staff not to come into work that day. But I would never have dreamed that January 6th would have been what it was 2 years ago. So I think the country saw it play out in front of their eyes. And I'm going to pray that there are going to be Republicans that are going to work with us as Democrats. And, you know, if Donald Trump wins this election, I said this in 2016. He has won a legitimate election. He's the president. I'm going to work with him. But I fear that if people don't, we cannot, the strength of democracy comes on people's trust in
And consent.
of what happens on election day in those institutions.
That's how we confer authority.
That is correct. And if people lose their trust in these institutions, and that we're in real trouble. So I hope that my colleagues across the aisle understand that, and we will work together, because if that happens, democracy as we know it may not exist.
As you are no doubt aware, there have been 2 attempts on former President Trump's life. One inflicted actual wounds. 1 American died, 2 were wounded. There was what has now been charged as an attempted assassination at his golf course. And you've heard Republicans say that the larger rhetoric of this campaign is at least partially to blame. They're not saying Republican rhetoric, they're saying Democratic rhetoric. How do you respond?
What I'll say to you is all of us have to watch our rhetoric. I'm very worried. I've said it to you throughout this interview. I am worried about the level of vitriolicness, the level of what's become acceptable behavior. I'm very, very, very grateful nothing happened to Donald Trump. I feel horrified by the death of the fireman in Pennsylvania and that family that was just participating in their very democratic right. Like the last thing they ever thought is that they wouldn't have a father or a husband that day. And the Secret Service did do their job at that golf course and did find the second. Reminds me.
Did not do their job as well as they could have in Butler, Pennsylvania.
No, they
as even
didn't.
they
They're
now
clear.
recognize.
There's clear problems. How did people not have that roof protected? How did they not know they spotted somebody? I agree. We all got to work together to keep everybody safe. But we all of us, not as a Republican or a Democrat, but as somebody who loves their country, as an American, have to stand up to hate wherever and whenever we see it. And violence under any circumstances is unacceptable. And people need to start to think about how, what you're watching is also, it's seeping into a norm. Social media is an anonymous place for people to say the most ugly, outrageous, bullying things. It's got to stop. It's got to stop. And it isn't one person. Each of us has got to take responsibility for standing up, for not letting this become a norm in this country. Because if we can't respect each other, if we cannot treat each other with the dignity and the respect that every human being deserves, then we are in real trouble.
Where does Elon Musk fit in that, what you just said?
Well, I don't know. He's a complicated person. The world is complicated. But he, just because of who he is and what he owns, has a real responsibility to understand the impact and the influence he has. And I would hope he'd care about the future of our democracy and would want people to be more respectful and not, there are too many people that are going for the sound bites. How much attention or how much action do you see or what people do up here? Because they're just going to get the media coverage so they can go put out a social media and raise money or get attention. That's not what's good for this country.
It is a new incentive structure here, unquestionably.
It's wrong. It's totally wrong.
So, if you were to sketch out for my audience what Congress will look like in terms of accomplishments between now and Election Day or in the lame duck session, what would you say?
Well, between now and Election Day, it is an accomplishment for us to keep the government open, which is very sad that we have to even worry. I mean, even
minimum standard of achievement.
Minimum standard of achievement. And even Mike Johnson said that it would be irresponsible to shut the government down days before an election. And that's all that's going to happen. Let's be honest. We'll have a couple more votes today on message bills that have misleading titles that are absolutely wrong. It angers me. Instead of really trying to do something to help the American people, like address the economy together, or to, I have a ton of bills that we need to get passed. That's all we're doing is this. Post-election, we got some serious stuff to do. We'll have to fund the government. Everybody's now worried about their Christmas plans. And I'm going to say it would also be irresponsible to shut the government down right before Christmas because of the number of government employees who keep us safe every day, from the airport to the TSA to the food inspectors to the law enforcement to Social Security checks. It would be irresponsible, and that's just something basic that we all need to be doing. But we need to get a farm bill done. And not only, our farmers are desperate for some kind of, we're going to have to reauthorize it in some way. But it also
Defense authorization bill?
But before we get off the agriculture farm bill, let's not forget how it feeds children, how it's school lunches, the other programs that are in that bill. Yes, we got to get the defense authorization bill done. We have to protect ourselves and our national security. And that has always been something that has been bipartisan. Let's not play games with that. You know, a Republican senator from Michigan a long time ago said politics should stop at the ocean's edge. We got to work together. We got to protect our country. We got to worry about national security and peace. I do not know how it has become so partisan. And maybe I'm old school. I am old school, but I'm not old. I may be seasoned. I'm not old. But that's what we're supposed to do as public servants. We're supposed to work together to protect our country, to protect those that we represent. And that means you got to make a bigger effort to work together and find solutions.
Seasoned, not old. Debbie Dingell, 6th District of Michigan Democrat, member of the House of Representatives. Thanks for inviting us to your office. Stay tuned for your Takeout Outtake Especial. We'll see you next week, folks.
I am not going to get 1 ounce of confidence about anything until this election is over and we win.
Welcome to your Takeout Outtake Especial. I'm Major Garrett. You already knew that. Debbie Dingell is our special guest. Congresswoman, 6th District of Michigan. Used to be the 12th District, Democrat. Democrats going to win the House?
Yes.
Really?
And we have to. We are the thin blue line that is going to make sure that we keep America safe.
Why are you so confident?
We are really focused on a lot of these. There are a lot of close seats, but I think we're doing a very good job of defining what's at stake. I think it's going to be close. I mean, I would like to say it's going to be this huge number, and maybe we'll surprise ourselves. But I think, quite frankly, the Republicans' inability to get a lot of work done this last 2 years has a lot of people willing to look and say what's at stake.
So if that happens, Hakeem Jeffries could in all probability be the first African-American Speaker of the House of Representatives.
He'll be Speaker, and I can't wait to call him Speaker Jeffries.
What would that mean to America from your vantage point?
Look, what I'm hoping is that we're going to get to a point. that we're going to stop having firsts, and that we're not looking at somebody because of their gender or their sexual preference or the color of their skin, that we look at each other as Americans. That I know.
Would that be a part of that evolution?
It would obviously be an important part of that evolution. But I don't look at Hakeem and think that. I look at Hakeem and think of this man that I've gotten to know since I've been here for the last decade, that I've had very thoughtful conversations with, who takes time to understand issues that I care about, from the auto industry and the union worker. He respects what I think about.
Standard bell announcement again, folks. Do not be alarmed. It's
But
very
it doesn't
normal,
mean
very
anything's
normal.
happening. I mean, I just, and he, by the way, is very good at bringing people together. He has this very soothing, understand, listen to everybody.
Possible for Democrats to win the House, but Vice President Harris not to win the presidency?
Look, anybody who doesn't know that this is a competitive election, she calls herself the underdog. I'm telling you, any American that's listening to this needs to understand their vote matters.
In Milwaukee at the Republican convention, I talked to several Republicans who felt the wind was definitely at their back, and it was not only an inevitable Trump victory, but he might even win the popular vote. They don't talk that way now.
No, they don't.
Things feel very close, but there also feels like there's an atmosphere in the country where if anyone wins big, it might be Harris. Do you think that's possible?
You know what? I just know I'm out
Because
there.
we're talking about the enthusiasm, the money, the volunteers. Those are real things. They're not make-believe.
I am a pragmatist. I am somebody who has seen things turn on a dime. We haven't seen the October surprise. I am not going to get 1 ounce of confidence about anything until this election is over and we win.
Will Michigan's results be earlier than previously? I'm told that Michigan can pre-process now, so you can have results more readily available.
Let's hope that they are. Again, let's see what happens. I expect people may be challenging, and I'm just taking it hour to hour and telling people vote. And I know Jocelyn Benson, who's our Secretary of State, is working with everybody to try to have a smooth night and get fast results, but accurate results.
Smooth night, fast, accurate results. A fervent prayer for everyone in America for election night 2024. Debbie Dingell, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see you next week, folks.